batteries, waiting for that opportunity to go forward to New Orleans and glory. And when their batteries run out of ammunition and stop firing, they were ordered again to fall back to their previous position downriver. And that was tremendously demoralizing to the British troops.
The British stand there, cold, wet, frustrated, and Andrew Jackson is going up and down his line saying, "What brilliant guys you are, you've beaten them again."
Another week passes before the British launch their final assault on January 8th.
Everyone that was not on the battlefield, the pious women, both black and white, and children, came to the convent. They talk about going into chapel and placing Our Lady of Prompt Succor on the altar and having Mass very early in the morning on January the 8th.
General Pakenham has a complex plan for beating the Americans.
The British force is split into 4 brigades. One attacks Jackson's line near the river, a second closer to the swamp, and a 3rd brigade stands in reserve ready to support whichever group succeeds.
A 4th brigade moves in boats to the west bank of the river to take out American batteries and turn those cannons against Jackson.
And all of it had to go off like clockwork, and unfortunately that didn't happen.
The British attack is troubled from the start. Their boats are bogged down and the river crossing is delayed.
They were carried far downstream of where they intended to land, so they had to double time it upriver.
What had happened with Pakenham, he was told of this disaster, and it was suggested to him that perhaps we should wait. But he decided, in his own words, "I will wait my plans no longer."
At dawn, those devilish Congreve rockets started streaking across the sky, and I knew the day had come.
At first, the British advance is shrouded in fog, but as the redcoats near the American line, they are ripped apart by a barrage of cannon fire and grape shot.
Spherical balls of lead, about the size of a grape. They would be loaded into a cannon, a whole bag full. That would turn that cannon essentially into a giant shotgun.
American riflemen line up 3 to 4 rows deep.
The first company there to take aim and fire, split in the center, retire to the rear to reload, and the second one step up and do the same. That way, even though the rifle is so slow to load, they can keep up a constant, galling, aimed fire. It looked like red combs marching across that field. Red combs like you would comb your hair, but the teeth were falling out of them at regular intervals.
The British had prepared fascines, large bundles of cane to be thrown into the Rodriguez Canal, and ladders to help their troops cross the water and get over the rampart. But the company assigned to bring those crucial items leaves without them.
They went back. They found the ladders and fascines. They picked them up. They were beginning to carry them forward. But by this time, the attack had been signaled.
The British attack near the river goes well at first. They overtake an American battery, but don't get enough support to hold that position.
As the British troops got in behind Line Jackson, they were counterattacked, and everybody that got in was either killed or captured.
You had the 93rd Sutherland Highlanders who were ordered to march across the battlefield to aid that main attack. Their officer was shot dead right after they were halted before joining the column. And they had no orders to either advance or retire. They had no orders to move, so they didn't move. They just stood there in point-blank range of American artillery and small arms and took it.
And this is one of the remarkable things of the battle. American accounts say this. They describe the 93rd as standing like a brick wall because the standard tactic used when a soldier is killed is that the man behind him steps forward and takes his place.
General Pakenham attempts to lead his faltering troops.
Riding forward to rally his men, he got shot off his horse once, found another horse, got back up and continued to rally his men in full view of the American line, and was promptly killed. Very, very brave.
The Highlanders absolutely do not run away. There are accounts from both sides of the line that the Sutherland Highlanders turn and march in parade ground fashion away from the line.
And the story goes that some of the Americans stopped firing and applauded them as they marched off.
That field was littered with the dead and dying. There was red coats everywhere, and the closer you got to my line, the thicker they were piled on top of each other. They started to move around on the ground amongst each other. And then all at once, I thought I was seeing a grand reproduction of the Holy Resurrection. Over 500 of those men stood up and marched forward toward my line to surrender.
The first word of victory is recorded in a handwritten note in the sacramental registry of the Catholic Church.
During communion, which would have been about 45 minutes into Mass, a messenger runs in and yells, "Victory is ours."
Amidst the carnage of the Chalmette battlefield, the British command falls to General John Lambert after 2 of his senior generals are killed and a 3rd gravely wounded. On the west bank of the river, British forces under the command of Colonel William Thornton have overrun the American artillery batteries, but their victory is too late.
But he sends back to the British command and says, "Send me 2,000 more troops over here. We've got it. This is the last defense works. Once we've taken this, we have a clear road up to the city of New Orleans on the other side of the river. Jackson doesn't have a right flank anymore." And he gets the message back, the incredible message back: pull out. Lambert is so shaken by what he has seen on the East Bank that he grabs defeat from the jaws of victory.
This letter from the historic New Orleans collection was written by Louis Toussard, the French consul in New Orleans. He writes, "Yesterday, the British experienced the most bloody butchery ever recorded in American history. They were entirely slaughtered from the heavy fire of 18 or 20 pieces of artillery." As word of the victory spreads through New Orleans, the Ursuline nuns sing the Te Deum.
It's a song and it's a prayer that we say for Thanksgiving, after a battle, after a victory, after something glorious that has happened.
It is a prayer that is still sung by the Ursulines every January 8th for the past 200 years.
No one in the rest of the country thought that American troops could successfully contend with the British troops that had burnt our capital the previous summer. Everyone was expecting to hear that New Orleans had fallen.
And it gave Americans a sense of national identity that they hadn't necessarily had before the battle.
I think more than anything else, the New Orleans campaign solidified the idea of America, or the United States, as an independent country.
Jackson became the man of the hour. He was the man who kind of restored American confidence in our country, in our military capacity to defend ourselves.
After the battle, Andrew Jackson visits the Ursuline nuns to thank them for their prayers. And the city of New Orleans honors its hero in a massive celebration at St. Louis Cathedral. The Treaty of Ghent, which was signed by negotiators just as the fighting began in New Orleans, is finally ratified by the U.S. Senate on February 16th, a month after the battle. That officially ends the War of 1812. And it was a miraculous victory on the Mississippi River at New Orleans that lifts the morale of Americans and ensures the future of a young nation.